Okay, so I would ask if all our participants can mute their microphones. That would be great. We acknowledge that the lands upon which we live, learn, and work are the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe peoples. We thank them for sharing these lands and commit as an organization, as educators, and as individuals to an ongoing relationship that recognizes and respects the lands, the traditions, and the culture of the Anishinaabe people.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike DeBow. I'm Director General of the Western Quebec School Board. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you here today. This week is our Anti-Racism, Anti-Discrimination Week. So to mark this week, we've had a speaker series this week. We've had speakers from the Western Quebec School Board talk about their personal experiences and talk about some topics that are very important for all of us. It's my utmost pleasure this morning to introduce Carlos Brown. I've known Carlos and worked with Carlos for the past 13 years. I met him when I was Director of Education, and we worked together on some projects. I've known Carlos to be dedicated and certainly hardworking, intelligent, and always giving to our community. This year we formed a committee called ARC, and he's been an integral part of ARC. And he's prepared this really insightful workshop for all of us today to bring to light some very important issues. Carlos is entitled, his workshop this morning is entitled Cross-Training the Minds of Our Students, the Importance of Representation in Schools and on the Field of Play. Carlos is a former head coach, or he is a coach. He talks about how to recognize and overcome racism using his life experiences in sports and the school system as a model. Carlos is part of our team. He's a treasurer of one of our treasurers in Western Quebec, and it gives me great pleasure to now turn it over to Coach Brown. Coach Brown.
All right, thank you so much for that. It's very important that I've been given this opportunity. I want to acknowledge that it was your vision that allowed us to put ourselves in this position. Welcome everyone, bonjour. I hope everyone is doing well today. I know it's Friday and the weekend is near. I know everyone's excited about spring arriving, but before we take off this week to this weekend, there's one more session that we have to talk about anti-discrimination and Anti-Racism Week. And I'm so glad and fortunate that I've gotten the opportunity to speak with everyone today. So what I'm going to be doing throughout the presentation is I'm going to be using PowerPoint, and hopefully you guys will be able to see that when I bring it up on the screen. So let's start with that PowerPoint presentation. Sharing my screen. PowerPoint presentation and start with slideshow. And from the beginning. All right, so the introduction was already made. This picture was 15 years ago, so that is not that's the old me, not the new me. The ARC series, again, this is the organization or committee that we started. ARC series refers to Anti-Racism Committee Building Group. However, ARC is also about awareness, relationships, and commitment. Awareness is being this presentation. Relationship is the one we're trying to build with each other right now. And the commitment is that after this conversation, that we'll continue to do the things that we talked about. All right, the line acknowledgement has already been done earlier by Mr. Singfield, and I wanted to also have what we call guidelines for today's presentation. It is important that at this time in the presentation that they're welcome and their opinions is welcome, and they're not going to be treated in any kind of negative way, so they're free to express themselves. So I use this as a theme to get your mind in that space. I will listen with my mind and heart. I will embrace my discomfort. I will consider my privileges. I will speak from my own experience, meaning I statements. I will respect myself and others. I will honor what is shared, and I will share what is learned. Stories stay, but lessons leave. All right, another personal thing that I would like to do before going on is I like to acknowledge a championship response by the Toronto Raptors president, Masai Ujiri. He's a Black gentleman that is one of the presidents in the NBA. If you guys remember a few years ago, the Toronto Raptors had won the NBA championship. And in the process of doing that, Mr. Ujiri was on his way to the floor to celebrate with his team. On that travel towards the court, he ran into a police officer that did not like the fact that he was there, saw him as a threat. They got into an altercation where he was pushed by the police officer twice, and then there was an incident where he was involved in pushing him. But the police officer claimed that Mr. Ujiri was a threat to him at that time. And as we can see on the videos that you've seen, that was not the case. So Mr. Ujiri decided to do his best to support the Black Lives Matter with his organization, Toronto Raptors, as well as the National Basketball Players Association, with members of the WNBA and other unified commit, address and bring light to the racial injustices that continue to exist in our society. So today I want to talk to you about how very important it is that we have diverse groups of people that teach, educate, and mentor our students in the Western Quebec School Board. We can improve the learning experiences of our students and staff members, just like in our community. I was moved by the efforts of the NBA and WNBA. Both professional leagues came together and chose to use their platform and voice their concerns by boycotting games and taking a stand against racial injustice. Diversity and inclusion is key to getting us to move in a positive, just direction. I hope that the NHL, alongside other professional and amateur sporting organizations, continue to use their platforms to challenge injustice in our society with their support of the Black Lives Matter movement. So that was a personal thing that I wanted to bring up with everyone, and hopefully you see why I would bring it up to help me with my presentation today, and know it's very important that these things are brought to light and we can talk about them. All right, so today's presentation is going to be focused on cross-training the minds of our students. Now, I use the title cross-training the minds of our students, seeing that I'm a coach. We have to find different ways of how to get our student athletes in shape and strong physically, and they're being competitive. So cross-training, if you wanted to be a very good athlete, you would do different exercises to try and strengthen yourself and strengthen your body. For example, you do push-ups, you do sit-ups, you do pull-ups, you do bench press, you would be running, you'd ride a bike. All these different training exercises that you do is so you can have a well-rounded body in terms of being strong and prepared. So using that, I thought of the mind of our students. In the mind of our students, if they're only doing one exercise the entire time, let's say we're doing push-ups, well, my upper body is going to be developed, but the rest of my body will not. So from the mindset of teaching students, if a student is only learning one way the entire time, it is very difficult to reach their full potential. So in saying that, the importance of BIPOC representation in our schools and our fields of play is very important. BIPOC refers to Black, Indigenous, people of color. Those people's experiences and knowledge are needed in our curriculum and schools to better cross-train the minds of our students. This will enrich our overall experiences in the classroom, workplace, and community. All right, so here you go. That was my intro to our session today, but I would like to also get your involvement. So in your classroom right now, I'm going to ask you to think of this scenario, and this scenario is hopefully one that people have seen, and hopefully if you haven't gone through it, this is just a situation to reflect on that situation. So if you do, you know how to handle it better in the future. So the title is Injured Stories about Unconscious Racism. Picture this. It is the first day at school and you're in gym class, and two students were selected to pick teams for dodgeball. The students are John and Cameron. John really wants to win the dodgeball game. John decided to choose only the black students in the class to join his team. John felt that the black students looked like they were the best athletes and would assumedly give him the best chance of winning the dodgeball game. Cameron, on the other hand, chose his team according to the people that looked familiar to him from last year. My question to everyone, and I'll give you time to ponder this question, think about it, is John or Cameron displaying any form of stereotyping or unconscious racism in this story? So as a coach, I have to keep my timing with my practices and everything else. So I'm actually going to time everyone and give you approximately 1 minute to think about the question that we have. Ready, set, and go. Okay, that's roughly about the time. Hopefully the classrooms and teachers were able to have a small discussion about what they thought of the story. And you can use the features that are there for raising your hand, or you can use the chat feature to give your response. There are no wrong responses. We're just hoping for you to do your best to see what you can interpretate from this story when it comes to inappropriate responses or inappropriate behavior. Just checking to see if there's any response in the chat. Right, if there's no other responses, we will try to get back to. John was stereotyping when he thought that the black people were going to be the best athletes. Okay, thank you for that response, Ms. Furlot. John is stereotyping because he is basing his selection on athletic ability from Jamie. Thank you very much. Any comments are welcome before we move on to the next part of the presentation? Do we have any responses from Sims Junior High School? Not to worry about the grammar today. Our focus is on anti-racism, anti-discrimination. Cameron is unconsciously picking people seeing us familiar rather than giving others a chance to play with him. That's a very good point. Thank you for sharing that. He's not able to open up to see other people. That's a very good point. Thank you very much. Patridge, I believe it is. Appreciate it. Stereotyping can exist even when people think it's compliment about group's ability. Thank you very much. That is a very good point. It's sometimes not seen as being a stereotype or unconscious racism. It's seen as just the norm. But yes, it is a concern, and we should not practice that particular way of doing things. Cameron is not stereotyping people based on their appearance or capability, just how much he knows these people from the previous year. That is correct as well. Cameron does recognize his friends from the past, and that's a normal behavior. That's not necessarily a negative thing. However, someone brought up a point earlier that maybe Cameron can see if he can expand his role and visit others or try to meet new people. Don't see this. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go back and share our screen again. And hopefully get back into our presentation. So let me make sure I do that. Share content and share my presentation. Begin. Okay, thanks again for everyone for their contributions in the chat regarding the questions. We're just going to continue on from there. Again, thank you very much for doing so. The next screen we're going to talk about is definitions. I think it's very important that we have the conversation and understand that racism is something that we can talk about. Racism is not something that we want to not talk about. We want to continue to have conversations about it. In order to do so, I wanted to make sure we all comfortable with the definition of racism. All right. The word race is used to describe people based on their physical appearance, often using the color of their skin to identify them. Race is also the root word for racism, which is when a group of people are treated unfairly because of their race. Unfortunately, some groups of people are even treated violently because of the color of their skin. Okay, there's a question I'd like to ask the audience right now, and this is another opportunity for you to participate. And again, we can do it through the chat or raising of your hand, and I will try my best to respond to those comments and questions. Have you ever seen or experienced racism before? If so, can you please share some of your experiences with us now in this safe environment? It is important that we have a space that we can talk about it and recognize that it's not just us that's going through it, that there's others that are going through similar things. And through that, we can build on our conversation and how we potentially can deal with, handle, manage, cope with these types of issues. Thanks again, and please go ahead and use the chat and the raising of your hand to have that conversation. So if you have situations, okay, thank you for that. Okay, we have a situation where a student is has Muslim faith, and through that connection, he's been called a terrorist. That's a situation that I'm sorry that you had to go through, but it has occurred many times before, and I want you to understand that it is not okay in our school system that you are treated that way, and we're doing everything that we can to take away those situations from our experiences in our school system. Thank you very much for sharing, Lefernier. I appreciate that. There are definitely going to be situations where individuals are going to use the background of someone, the color of their skin, to use that as a negative thing to either bully or to discriminate against. And it's unfortunate that it has happened. My suggestion to you is that you go and see someone in your school regarding a teacher, a parent, the principal, a guidance counselor, someone who can sit down with you and have these conversations, irregardless of your ability on a soccer field or a basketball court or in a swimming pool or on the ice. It is important that you feel safe and that you feel that you're a part of what we're trying to accomplish here in our school board, and that you have the right to have a safe environment and people not picking on you because of the color of your skin or where you're from or the language you speak or the religion that you have. Thank you very much for sharing. If there are no other questions, we'll go back to the presentation, the comments. Okay, that's what the question that we have. Hopefully everyone can see that. Okay, the next part of our presentation, we're going to be talking about anti-racism. And again, hopefully, as I said, hopefully everyone can see that on the screen. If there's someone that can send me a response saying that it shows that it's on the screen, that'd be awesome. Thank you. All right, so the next definition that we're going to be speaking about is the definition of anti-racism. Our week is called Anti-Racism, Anti-Discrimination, or Anti-Racism Week. Racism, therefore, okay, so for example, I'm going to use a scenario where I'm going to be talking about racism, anti-racism, and hopefully I'll get it on the full screen so it makes it a lot easier for everyone to see. Let's go back to the presentation. Hide that. Okay, so here we go. Very sensitive. Anti-racism. Therefore, because anti-racism is something that we are still learning about. It is important that we understand that many people think that when they say that I'm anti-racist, it means they're not against racism. And really and truthfully, that is not the true meaning of it. Anti-racism action means taking action. It requires more than just having or showing empathy for Black people. It starts with listening, learning as much as you can on the critical or crucial topic. If you feel tired of hearing about racism, imagine how Black people feel when police kill or harass another Black person without rightful cause. Ask Asian people how they feel when they are blamed for the spread of coronavirus. ask Muslim people how they feel about Islamophobia, which is something that one of our students mentioned, that they were called a terrorist in the school by one of the kids, which is something that is unacceptable. Okay? Ask Indigenous people how they feel when they have no clean drinking water. We can rest, but we cannot stop. Dismantling racism is everyone's responsibility. Okay, so the next part of our presentation is something that's dear to me as well, and that's the definition of anti-Black racism. So I'm going to give you a couple quotes and comments regarding it, and you'll see on the left it says, rise above the challenges you will face. So rooted in Canadian institutions such as education, healthcare, and justice that are mirrored and reinforcing beliefs, attitudes, and prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination towards people of African descent. That is my definition of anti-racism. Speaking from the most influential person in our country presently, Mr. Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister, says anti-racism is alive in Canada, and we need to be better. We need to be better in Canada, even though we've made strides forward in the fight against racism and discrimination. Racism still exists in Canada. He said to young Black Canadians, I hear you when you say you are anxious and angry. My personal story that I like to share with you. One of my goals in my profession was to become a professional basketball coach at the highest level I could in Canada. Having gone through being a player, having being to assistant coach, having done recruiting, filming, you name it. I was trying to learn as much as I can about the sport of basketball, so someday I would be the head coach. Well, when the opportunity came up, I was told when applying for that head coaching position at the highest level in Canada that they would never hire a Black man. I still feel choked up about that comment. It still affects me today. And to know that I could do everything I could possibly can to help that institution within the roles that I was given, but to be the person in charge was something that was not possible or thought of as the last resort, made me feel a little upset and devastated at that specific comment. So I had an opportunity to make a choice, and the choice that I chose was I chose to use that comment to motivate myself, and I eventually became one of the few Black head coaches in Canada. Okay, one type of racism which I mentioned and using my stories is individual racism. This is where you feel that racism is directed towards you and felt by you. Okay, so while I became coaching in competitive basketball in Canada, I found it was very interesting that in every venue outside of my own university, the assumption when entering some restaurants, hotels, or athletic facility, it was regularly assumed that the white individuals on our coaching staff were the individuals in charge. I was treated differently than the white coaches who were my assistants at the time. At the end of a championship game, the head coach of the other team did not shake my hand. It's usually customs for at the end of the game that coaches from different teams, regardless if you win or lose, they greet each other at center court and they shake hands after having the game. In this case, that did not occur. It was the president of the coaching association that intervened later to attempt to rectify the situation by saying what had occurred was not acceptable. Carlos, myself, was to be greeted at half court and the other coach chose not to do so. So the president of the association stepped in and brought us together and said, that is not acceptable. And Carlos, I'd like to apologize on behalf of the Coaches Association, because again, it made me feel that I was not welcomed into the coaching fraternity and that my respect was not given, similar to what I was giving out in return. So that was a very difficult situation. There was some harm done there, and it was difficult to get through. Thought I would share. Okay, the next part of our conversation is about systemic racism. And instead of going in just to the definition, I wanted to give you guys an idea of some of the things that reflect systemic racism within Canada and one story from the United States. Okay, so example number one of stories of systemic racism. Example number one, when the Canadian government decided to force all Indigenous children to attend residential schools. Example number two, the Canadian government decided to round up all Japanese immigrants and lock them up in camps. World War II internment of all persons of Japanese race. Internment means being confined as a prisoner because of a political or military reasons. Example number three, Africville was an African Canadian village located just north of Halifax and founded around mid-19th century. The city of Halifax demolished the once prosperous seaside community in the 1960s in what many said was an act of racism. The mayor of Halifax Regional Municipality apologized for the actions in 2010. For many people, Africville represents the oppression faced by Black Canadians and the efforts to right historical wrongs. Example number four, Queen's University officials publicly apologized for a policy that 100 years barred Black students from studying at Queen's School of Medicine. In 2018, Edward Thomas uncovered the fact that a motion passed in Queen's Senate in 1918 and enforced until 1965, barring students of African descent from becoming doctors at Queen's University. Example number five, this is more recent, and this is taken out of the CBC article, just quotes from an individual speaking regarding a job description that asked for only white individuals in the nursing and caring field. You have racism in Quebec, quote, it does exist. There is a clientele that's older, they are racist, and we have to provide care for them. Staff end up alone with racist clients. Employees will often request to be transferred because they do not want to suffer the abuse, she said. If we send someone who is Black or a different background, the client will be mean, abusive, verbally, physically to the workers. To one of my employees, I don't want to put my employees in that position. Regardless, she refused to bend in any requests at the white staff. We will not discriminate here. There is an open investigation by the ministry on these incidents. This particular story I wanted to bring to the attention that there's a generational connection to racism, and that is when you are born into the world, there is no specific thing that brings you into the world as a racist person. There's no gene, there's no development, evolution that brings you into the world as a racist person. So children are taught these particular beliefs. Children are influenced in these particular beliefs. And I feel that if we can all come into the world the way we came in as children and treat everyone with the level of respect throughout, we might have a better place for us to be in. And that is my own personal thought. Finally, we have example number 6. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an important leader in the civil rights movement, which helps to end the practice of segregation. Segregation, for those that do not know, is the term that was used in the the southern United States and some places in Canada at the time to separate Black people from white people in as many aspects as possible. We could not go to the same schools. We could not eat in the same restaurants. We could not drive on the transit system in a certain way. We couldn't drink from the same water fountain. We couldn't have interrelationships between Black and whites. All aspects were segregated. So Martin Luther King was a very important individual in terms of trying to dismantle those old-fashioned ways. Okay, the definition of systemic is still using examples to help you, but to make sure everyone gets a full understanding of it. The problem with systemic racism is that it's always around us. We are born into it. It is deeply embedded in our culture and our communities, including our schools, the justice system, the government, healthcare system. It is so widespread that people often don't even notice how policies, institutions, and systems disproportionately favor some while disadvantaging others. Okay, the next part of our presentation is talking about recognizing racism. Okay, it's happened to me. I've recognized it, and I'm doing everything I can to deal with those situations. I'll try to give you some ways that you can do it as well. Before I go on, the author Ibram X. Kendi wrote the book How to Be an Anti-Racist. In this book, there is a quote that I would like to share. The only way to undo racism is to consistently identify and describe it, and then dismantle it. The only way is to undo racism is to consistently identify, describe it, and then dismantle it. Okay. In order to do so, the next screen is talking about diversity and inclusion. Okay. Inclusion is the practice or policies of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized members and minority groups. It is important that we continue to do our best to change the current trends in our school system to a more inclusive manner in all areas. To combat racist beliefs, we need to seek diversity in our life. It's hard to gain a new perspective if all you do is spend time with people who look like you, think like you, and act like you. It is also hard to learn about other people if the media you consume only reflects people who are similar to you. One study found that simply living in areas create greater diversity cause people to be less racist and more tolerant. This phenomenon, known as passive tolerance, happens because people are exposed to more positive examples rather than basing beliefs on racial stereotypes. People gain a more representative and realistic perspective through direct experiences. Okay. All right, so strategies to help you with dismantling racism. Things to help you on your anti-racism journey. Number one, acknowledge the modern day racism exists. The acknowledgement that it is here. Racism is here. We know it's here. It's hidden sometimes, but we have to do our best to call it out. Number two, recognize your prejudice. Everyone has their prejudice. You are allowed to have that in you. It's when you try to bring it out and try to convince others to have those same prejudice with you, that's when it becomes a problem, and that's when it starts to tear the fiber of our community apart. Learn about yourself. Learn your likes and your dislikes. Learn about other people. It is important that you find out what's going on with other people before you stereotype what other people like. Learn about other people. Interact with people from different races. I can use this as an example. When I'm coming to school, to the University of Ottawa, I remember coming to the school thinking there weren't a lot of people that attended school that looked like me. But I didn't see that as a negative. I saw it as an opportunity to meet new people. In my first year of residence, my roommate was from Vietnam. On another resident floor, my roommates were Japanese. I was starting to meet people from different parts of the world, getting different viewpoints, seeing things through different lens, and becoming a well-rounded person, like I talked about earlier in the presentation. You want to have that experience. You want to have that point of view to see things differently, because it's going to help you to grow and help you to become a whole person rather than just seeing things through a tunnel vision. And finally, educate yourself. All right, this presentation hopefully has given you more insights and helped you in learning about anti-racism, anti-discrimination. And hopefully, if you see something in the presentation that you want to follow up on and learn more about, please go and educate yourself. You can speak to your teachers, you can go to the library, you can go online, you can speak to your elders, you can find different ways of educating yourself about people. My experience is that the more people I've gotten to know from different backgrounds and different places, the better it's been for me and my growth. All right, before we finish up our presentation, I wanted to talk about a new term that's come up. It's called microaggression. This is an intentional or unintentional offensive message that targets a person based entirely on their being a member of a minority group. Any form of racism is unacceptable. Even a comment or an action that is subtle or occurs in a casual environment. I'm going to give you another story or situation that comes up. We are in a classroom and we're getting ready to watch a presentation similar to ours, and we decide to turn off the light. And we'll say this particular student's name is Victor. So Victor is in the classroom with me and several students, other teachers, and Victor turns and says, when the light is turned off, "Mr. Brown, where are you? I can't see you. Mr. Brown, you should smile, then I could see you." That particular comment is something that I would use an example as microaggression. It is attempted to be humorous, it's attempted to be light, but in actual, it is not. It's not shedding any light. And if it is, it's something of darkness, which puts me in a position where I start to feel uncomfortable, or I start to feel that because of my color of my skin, people are allowed to make fun of me because the light's turned off. Okay, so that is another example of microaggression. A couple books of reference that you can use for better understanding or more understanding is the book is called The Skin We're In. It's Canadian content, A Year of Black Resistance and Power. And the author of that book is a gentleman by the name of Desmond Cole. So I would suggest for those that would like to continue to educate themselves, that is a book that you can use to increase their knowledge about racism, systemic, individual, institutionalized racism within Canada. Okay, suggestions for change. I think this is one of the last screens. Participate. Take part in events that are designed to combat racial injustice. Steps you can take to help make a difference include volunteering or donating your time to an organization that's fighting injustice, participate in social movement, amplify minority voices within your school, join a committee. I know that we were seriously considering a Black Lives Matter movement here at our school, come up with our own ideas. Please join and experience that with us by giving your perspectives and how things are going on, and you can do that at your own school. Put a committee together for kids of BIPOC and find out if you guys are going through similar challenges at school with racism, discrimination, or stereotyping. Voting on issues in your community. Get involved with politics, such as serving on committees, running for office. Before I go any further on that, as you get older, you can do that, but within the school, there's governing board, there's parents committee, there's student council, there's other things that you can get involved in helping make change within your school. Work to make changes in any setting where you have the power to do so. Use your position and voice to affect change in your workplace, in your school, your community, and your local government. Specific steps to be taken. Teachers and staff members need to have proper tools and techniques to support racialized children in our school system. Seek out expert advisors to educate educators on how to reach marginalized children in a positive way. Encourage and promote the need for more diversity within our staff members, within our school board. Hiring of more visible minorities in the school system. Improve the curriculum with the addition of more BIPOC content and resources. The untold history of our country. With the implementation of some of these changes, I believe it can improve the students' experience in our school system. Working together and learning from diverse groups of people and students, that is one of the reasons why I've joined the ARC committee and be a part of the ARC speaker series for this week's anti-discrimination, anti-racist week. And it was a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to speak with you. Hopefully you were able to learn one or two things about the topic. And at this point, I would like to answer any questions or any comments that you would like to share. Thank you again, and hopefully we can hear from you in the comments sections. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, how long has this movement been happening?
In terms of movement, are you talking about the anti-racism, anti-discrimination?
Yes.
For me, I started with this this year with the committee for ARC with our school board, but I've been living it pretty much since I've gotten to Canada, since I've been 8 years old. So that's roughly, for me personally, that's roughly 42 years. Thank you. Please go ahead and ask comments, questions in the chat. I'll be happy to respond to them before we finish our presentation today. Thank you, Ms. Partridge. I'm glad that the students were able to learn some things today. Like I said, if you want to check and follow up on any of those things through references or resources, you can also contact me to have conversations at a later time. To the students, Ms. Partridge asking why were you treated the way you were when you applied for the basketball head coach position? They feel was unfair. I would agree that it was unfair that they treated me that way during that process. It was very hard for me to accept at the time. I remember playing for the university. I remember coaching as an assistant coach for the university. I remember traveling all over Canada, recruiting players to come to the university. But when it came time for me to be in the position of a program manager or head coach, it was felt that the university was not ready to put a person of color in a position as prominent as the head coach. Thank you for the question. Definitely, I can suggest resources for that online. Most of the resources I've received so far has come from the Ontario District School Boards, Carleton Board District School Board. They have forwarded me a lot of information. If you want to contact me through my Western Quebec account, I'd be happy to forward some of that information to you. And that's for Ms. McLean. Ms. Partridge, you are welcome. Again, any questions regarding my experience, whether it be within the school board, whether through coaching, whether it be from the island of Jamaica, where I grew up, to come to Toronto, then to Ottawa, and then to Gatineau. Any questions regarding my experience, I'd be happy to answer.
Hey, Carlos, you have a hand up, Mel Lafreniere.
Okay, can you go ahead and hand up?
What was the biggest difference in culture between Jamaica and Canada?
The difference with Jamaica and Canada, number one, is the temperature. The temperature is not as frigid unless you're sitting on top of a blue mountain where it actually snows at certain points during the year. But in terms of people, it is a more relaxed environment. It is more friendly oriented. People are trying their best to work together. There are moments when things aren't positive. However, that is less than there is moments of joy, excitement, and community. Thank you for the question.
Nothing in the line right now, Carlos. You've been able to, as you know, I was away, but you've been able to answer the questions that were in the chat.
Yes, I was able to find a way to get to that. Yeah.
Good.
Ms. Callio, to Mr. Callio's class, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to today's presentation. And I'm glad that you guys will be ambassadors of anti-racism within your school and making sure that those kind of behaviors no longer continue. I'm very proud of you guys for speaking up, and I wish you guys the best on your journey to helping us change our schools and our communities to a better place.
And Carlos, just before you leave, as you know, this concludes our week of our inaugural week of the ARC Speaker Series, and I just want to extend again a huge thank you to you and to Drew Wapachi McDougall for getting things started off in such an exemplary manner. We've had excellent participation, and thank you again to the people who participated. We look forward to hosting other speaker presentations in our series. Reminder that the presentations, there will be one of each of Mr. Brown and Ms. Wapachi McDougall's presentations will be featured next week on our website, the board website, available to download. But it's been a great week having you present, and certainly just from witnessing myself, but also the feedback that we've received already, it's had a very profoundly positive impact. So a heartfelt thank you to you for your taking the time and contributing in this manner, and wish you a great day and weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singfield, and I'd like to thank the Western Quebec School Board for giving us the opportunity to do what we do. This shows that they are growing in a direction that is going to make this school board one of the best school boards in our province and hopefully in our country.